In my recap of session 25 of A Debt to a Friend, I had spoken very briefly about the OGL and my opinions on it, which essentially were, this has the potential to be bad, it is not yet that bad. However, if it does get bad, get ready to pack your things up and leave. And unfortunately, in record time, has it actually escalated that far? I'm here to say that I'm wrong, and that I will be cancelling my Dungeons & Dragons Beyond subscription the day after it renews. The reason why I say the day after is because then my group has, in fact 3 groups at least, using my content, will be able to use that content for another month before they have to call it quits and either continue playing D&D, I guess, through different means. If I share the books in whatever way I can that's within the terms of service of D&D Beyond, or we play another system. The reason why I'm making such a decision is because, one, I have to put my money where my mouth is. I will not support a company that has not just thought about doing this, about changing the OGL in such a way that it could affect third-party publishers and virtual tabletops, but the way they keep on going about it. Let's have a look at a history of when this sort of began. If I go on D&D Beyond here and I look at the articles, on December the 21st, 2022, D&D Beyond staff, the nameless entity D&D Beyond staff, had told us that about the OGL and if it's going to be covered in 1D&D, and essentially we got something of a non-answer. Then we started getting answers in the form of an update to the Open Gaming License, and we got a very tone-deaf response. Then we had Kyle Brink, finally the first person attaching their name to this, so either a scapegoat or whatever the case may be, to add some sort of humanity to this. Bear in mind that Kyle Brink's contributions to the D&D forums count for diddly squat. He's been a member of the D&D team, rather D&D Beyond team, for 3 days. And this post was made 3 days ago. Essentially, he made his account about 20 minutes before this post went live. So then the executive producer of Dungeons & Dragons comes out and explains what they're going to be doing about this, with very little to no explanation of the wrongdoing. There was saying we are sorry is an apology, but it's a very weak apology, and they are more trying to explain rather than apologise their actions. And just when I thought we were going to get some honesty, some decency, we end up with starting the OGL playtest, an article that was penned on the 19th of January 2023, 8 PM GMT, I imagine that is. That could be in their local time, so you'll have to forgive me if I'm not overly familiar. So they go into all this, and this seems fine about what they want to do. They want to protect inclusivity. They want to make sure there's no hateful or harmful content in any OGL books. They want to talk about VTTs and the future of gaming in the tabletop, as coronavirus had a massive impact on what it means to play D&D in the 21st century. They talk about other things as well, and we also have a draft for the Open Gaming License here, as well as a survey, which I must admit, it's taken a while for me to actually find this survey, so apologies there. I don't know if this survey is produced by a neutral party. I'm not familiar with Alchema, or whatever that is, so you'll have to forgive me there for not overly familiar. Knowing this, I will probably actually go through the survey in the video, just to see what kind of questions they're asking. But in the meantime, let's have a look at the OGL and what the problems are as such. So it's already taken me to that page. So honestly, I'm generally fine with the OGL. 1.2 as proposed here in this. Bearing in mind that this is a very basic draft for people like me to understand. This does not contain like all of the legalese that would be expected from such a license. This is a very basic version of the document. But even then, what I have difficulty with is this clause right here. So 6F. Okay, so first of all, I want to say that I think we all agree that hateful content and conduct should not be permitted in D&D. It should not be permitted in the OGL. There's no reason why anyone would support bigotry, at least it's a positive reason. I agree with the idea that you will not include content in your licensed works that is harmful, discriminatory, illegal, obscene, or harassing, or engage in conduct that is harmful, discriminatory, illegal, obscene, or harassing. So, what's the problem here? The problem is that they have the sole right to decide what content or conduct is hateful, and you covenant that you will not contest any such determination via any suit or other legal action. My problem with this is this line right here. We have the sole right to decide. And furthermore, you can't take us to court over that. So we, Wizards of the Coast, who have owned D&D for decades now, and have only just actually dealt with any of the hateful content beginning in, say, 2019, with, for example, Tasha's Cauldron's custom lineages, removing a lot of the harmful stereotypes surrounding things like orcs and goblins and dwarves and elves and such, the Tolkien-esque traits and inspirations thereof. To say, well, hey, you can actually make orcs how you want to in your world. You can make these characters in your world how you want to. Eventually, like editing monster manuals to perhaps remove some of the more harmful depictions of creatures. This is the same Wizards of the Coast, however, who is deciding that now that they are the sole arbiters of goodness and social justice, after they have only just removed H.Y.D.R.A content, controversial H.Y.D.R.A content after Spelljammer Adventures in Space release. Not because they wanted to, but because they had to after Backlash. The H.Y.D.R.A depiction of essentially what was, like, putting it lightly, because I don't want to use any language that, may not be appropriate, but essentially it was the black and white minstrel show. And it was just a culmination of several bad race. Well, I mean, obviously all racist stereotypes are bad, but like really bad stereotypes culminated into this one image, and that wasn't okay. And Wizards of the Coast never thought until they had tons of backlash that this is bad and we shouldn't have it in our artwork. It has since been removed from D&D Beyond and the sort of like digital versions of the game. There will likely still be print copies out there that have this depiction, as well as some of the accompanying text, which was like, I guess, like ascended race or noble savage kind of stuff. It was very uncomfortable for a lot of people to read. So this company is the one that's deciding that they are the ones who decide what is hateful content, because they've dealt with racism twice. Right. After they had to be told to do it, not because they wanted to do it. So that's a problem right there. So that's one thing I don't like. Another thing as well is this down here. This is the virtual tabletop policy, and this is one of the reasons. This is like one of the major reasons why I have to give up giving money to D&D Beyond, or rather Wizards of the Coast, and because this could affect, once again, tabletop gaming as a whole. So Wizards of the Coast has introduced version 1 of the virtual tabletop policy. So as gamers and big fans of virtual tabletops, or VTTs, we are announcing this new VTT policy as part of the rollout of OGL 1.2. Why does Wizards need a VTT policy? This is where the dishonesty begins. This is what, not the dishonesty, the intellectual dishonesty, the literary dishonesty. This is where the smoke and mirrors begins, the obfuscation. The question here is, why does Wizards need a VTT policy. The question should be, does Wizards need a VTT policy? They've already concluded that Wizards does need a VTT policy. This is like, I don't like car analogies or food analogies. They're very rarely used well. But there was one, and I think it's actually used in marketing as a bit of a trick, where a car dealer will not ask you, do you want to buy the car? They'll ask you, if you like the car, do you want it in red or black or red or blue or whatever? Yeah? What colour do you want the car in? Yeah? They already assume, or they've already sort of roped you in with a purchase. Now they want to try and customise it. The option of not buying it isn't there. Does Wizards need a VTT policy is the question, but they are distracting from that question by saying, why does Wizards? They've decided that they need it, and now they're explaining it. They haven't allowed us to debate or discuss the possibility of there not being a VTT policy. And once again, like this, the language in this is not legalese. This is emotive language trying to appeal to emotion. And that's a problem that... Oh, sorry, I've just skipped to the top. I do apologise. This is the kind of language that pissed me off in the... Sorry, that's something else that's related to later points. So, a working conversation about the Open Gaming License. This was this kind of language that I saw in the update on the Open Game License. All this sort of stuff. It's like it's trying to appeal to your emotions, and I can't stand that. It's not helpful. And once again, it deserves to be backlashed. It deserves to be rebuked. So, let's talk about it. So, we support the role VTTs play in the tabletop space. Then in that case, you do not need a VTT policy. If you support them, what's the problem? The ability to game remotely means more people can game, and it's wonderful that thousands of people miles apart can share a space as though sitting around a table. Again, why does therefore there needs to be no VTT policy? But as VTTs advance, now this is where things get a little bit interesting, and I agree. The OGL, like, I understand that people don't like OGL 1.2. I see it as something of a necessity that it has to be able to move forward. The industry has boomed dramatically. I understand the need for this, or the desire for it. I also understand resistance to change, and I also understand the very logical and perfectly valid reasons why the first OGL should remain untouched and irrevocable, and all this. That should be absolutely fine as well. I understand both sides of the coin here. But as VTTs advance, their functionality will raise tricky questions. Okay. Where is the line between a VTT and a video game? Well, that's not a tricky question. Why is this a question? Instead of saying, this isn't a question, they've already said that this is a tricky question. Where this isn't a question that anyone was asking before, because it doesn't matter. The line between a video game and a virtual tabletop can be seen from fucking orbit. Or there just isn't one, because it doesn't matter. This is Wizards of the Coast, and this right here is the problem I have with Wizards of the Coast, because I saw this with Blizzard Entertainment on the forums. I should know. I was an MVP of the European forums eons ago, and I remember seeing this kind of behaviour from the Blue posters. And the lead designers, and just constantly face palming. And yeah, it's like, where is the line? It doesn't matter. This isn't a question that anyone's asking. It isn't important. This is directing people away from the very real problem. I've seen this language in video games too many times to know that this is horse shit. Where is the line between VTT and a video game? I'm not gonna lie, it's a tricky question, but what's the problem here? That's my question. Why do I have to answer that? Why can't I respond by saying, where is the line? So why can't I respond by saying, why is there a line, rather? What are you talking about? What's the line between a carrot and a graphics card? What does a VTT become? When does a VTT become more than just a replacement for the traditional tabletop? It depends on the tabletop? Those questions require thoughtful answers. Do they? Why? Why do these questions require thoughtful answers? You've just decided that. Answering them will take time. Why haven't you got an answer now? You're the ones who are posing the questions. No one has ever asked where is the line between a VTT or a video game. And if they have, it doesn't really matter. Like, no one's had a problem. Let me tell you now. There's a game out there called Neverwinter Nights. It's a D&D video game based on 3rd edition, or 3rd revised edition, of Dungeons & Dragons. That game has a thriving role-playing community. You can play D&D as if it were 3rd edition through that game. Just like what Baldur's Gate is today, just like what is like Divinity Original Sin 2 is. It's D&D for people who haven't played D&D. So you can actually have a DM create encounters and maps and dungeons and things like that and towns, place monsters in them and have the party go on a dungeon crawl. Yeah? Or have like a narrative adventure. It's why the game had as many expansions as it did. Some of them which were actually sold as DLC, official DLC. Because like they're that good. And people continue to play that game. There was a massive fandom for it and there still is. So, why is this a problem? It wasn't a problem before when Neverwinter Nights was being used as a virtual tabletop or playing D&D via the medium of a video game. And we want this policy to reflect your input. So we'll be asking for feedback and talking to you about our goals, and that discussion advances and new technology emerges. Now, as new technology emerges, this is important, and I'll explain why in the next paragraph. What is permitted under this policy? Using VTTs to replicate the experience of sitting around the table playing D&D with your friends. Okay, pretty narrow, but a pretty broad idea. But let's see their example. So displaying SRD content is just fine because it's just like looking it up in a source book. You can put the text of Magic Missile up in your VTT and use it to calculate and apply damage to your target. And automating Magic Missile's damage to replace manually rolling and calculating damage is also fine. The VTT can apply Magic Missile's 1d4 plus 1 damage automatically to your target's hit points. You do not have to manually calculate and track the damage. That's fine. D&D has something called, I use an app called Beyond 20, and that allows me to transfer, like if I roll something on my D&D Beyond character sheet, it shows up in Roll20, and so I don't have to use, I don't have to make a separate character sheet for Roll20 and hit all the buttons and widgets and dice rollers there. I far prefer Beyond 20, and there are other things for equivalent websites as well, like Foundry and the other one. This is what bothers me. This is the reason why now I have to consider, like RDM is also having to perhaps consider, or why they should perhaps be considering, another tabletop. This is important. What isn't permitted are features that don't replicate your dining room table storytelling. If you replace imagination with imagination, if you replace your imagination with an animation of the magic missile streaking across the board to strike your target, or your VTT integrates content into an NFT. Right, let's first of all address this one. If you replace your imagination with an animation of the magic missile streaking across the board to your target, so some VTTs, for their premium subscriptions or like just as part of a feature, you can have your character cast magic missile like a fireball and it will whoosh across the board and hit the target and cause it to waggle a bit or whatever. I think Roll20 does this, I think Foundry does this. I'm not overly familiar with that, to be honest. I've not seen it that much. Things like dynamic lighting are technically not counted as part of being permitted because that's an animation. Dynamic lighting is an animation. Fog of War is an animation. Opening a door, having a trap triggered, having torches flicker. That is not permitted under this policy. Because that's more like a video game, which for some reason Wizards of the Coast have a problem with. I will, honestly, this new technology emerges line is going to be very pertinent very soon. I promise you. So, or your VTT integrates our content into an NFT. What? What's that got to do with VTTs? I genuinely don't understand this. They need to explain what the point of this is. But I think the reason why they're mentioning this is because NFTs are an obvious bad guy, and fair enough. Let's be honest, they have problems, and the thing is that like we've kind of solved this problem in video games, where the reason why NFTs aren't welcome is because they don't work. If you want, I don't know, your NFT of SpongeBob SquarePants to play in Team Fortress 2 as well as it does Call of Duty and Crash Bandicoot and Spyro and Roblox, it won't work, because that's not how animation and rigging and character models and skeletons work. That's not how intellectual property works. That's not how game engines work. It's just wishful thinking to say, oh, what if I could play Crash Bandicoot in Mario Kart? Well, you can't, because that's not how that's not how game design works, you know? And it's not as simple as just transferring it over because it's an NFT. So I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to set NFTs up as the obvious bad guy and say, hey, look, we're justified because NFTs are bad, right? And they are. I'm not disputing that. But they are. This has been described as think of the children. NFTs are the new think of the children. And that's what they're doing here. Because people froth at the mouth when they see NFTs, and they think that people are going to fall for this. What they don't realise is Wizards of the Coast overwhelmingly underestimate their. I think that's something of an oxymoron or something. They massively, they woefully underappreciate their player base. Their player base consists entirely of rules lawyers, and they didn't think that we'd spot this. That's not the tabletop experience. That's more like a video game. The reason why this line of new technology emerges is so pertinent, because things like this are probably what the one D&D virtual tabletop the Wizards of the Coast are making is going to do. I imagine that because you don't use Unreal Engine 5 for a tabletop and not have the flashy things that Unreal does, right? No. I think they want exclusive rights to lighting effects, animations. I think they want exclusive rights to certain ways character tokens act, or like 3D models and miniatures and things like that. I genuinely think that they're trying and claw control. They want exclusivity. They want a monopoly on that sort of stuff. So, yeah, that's a bit disturbing, really, that this is the reason why they're introducing this virtual tabletop policy. There would be no virtual tabletop policy if they weren't making their own virtual tabletop. But the thing is that they have to compete with long-established tabletops, such as the ones that have joined Paizo's Open RPG Creative License, or ORC. So the companies that have joined are, let's have a look here. There's a lot of companies here, but you've got Roll20. They've joined the ORC. They've joined the Open Role-Playing Game Creative License, because they don't want. Because you know what the ORC isn't doing? It's not saying you're not allowed lighting effects. You're not, like, they're saying that you don't have to screw over your subscribers. Yeah, if you've got lighting effects and you've just paid a year's subscription, am I going to get my money back after paying for that and now having to lose that or not play D&D? Fantasy Grounds, Foundry, VTT, and Roll20 have all signed up for the Open RPG creative license. So, that's not good, is it? May I make my own VTT owlbear look like the one from the Monster Manual? No. We've never licensed visual depictions of our content under the OGL, just the text of the SRD. That hasn't changed. You can create a creature called an owlbear with the stat block from the SRD. You cannot copy any of our owlbear depictions, but if you've drawn your own unique owlbear, or someone else did, you can use it. So I think this is, as far as I'm aware, this seems fair. I get Again, going back to what they were saying before about how they want exclusive stuff for their own tabletop. I appreciate as well that there is, that they're, artists deserve to be paid for their work and they deserve ownership of it. That's fine. I don't object to that. But again, I think because it's balled up into all of it, it's just snowballed into this shit about NFTs and things like the line between a VTT and a video game. That intellectual dishonesty is what bothers me, and it's a shame because like good parts of this are getting rolled up into the rest of it, and it's not fair. So what about OGL 1.0? Does the policy apply to that? Oh, yes, you can apply. You can upload your already licensed content to VTT. Interesting. Okay. I own or operate a VTT. How does this affect me? If you are the owner, you have the same obligations that has for copyright content under the DMC. So I don't know how Creative Commons affects this, so we will see. The times they are changing. You say this is a conversation, does that mean this policy can change? What a free win. Yes! With an exclamation mark. We need your feedback as the tabletop space evolves. The potential of VTTs is tremendous and exciting, and we don't want to harm their development. So, why have you made the virtual tabletop policy then? Because you're trying to stifle their ideas and developments by getting rid of things. Also, as well, I forgot to mention another point as well, like, not all tabletops are equal. They're not all just a whiteboard with some black marker pen. People have like 3D miniatures, like 3D printed terrain, or they handcraft their own terrain. They have their own LED lights. They have their own things for simulating fog of war and dynamic lighting. They have their own sound effects and they have their own visual effects. People have and can do this. And not to mention as well, there's also tables, and I really like the look of these. In fact, I think my DM's friend bought a table that's like made for like virtual tabletop, where it's got like a TV in the middle, and it runs like Roll20, and it looks just like a tabletop. So, yeah, or like XP to level 3 has one of those tables as well. So the replacing imagination with an animation, that's not the tabletop experience. That's kind of worrying. They're dictating to me and other people who play tabletop games differently what is and is not a tabletop experience, an authentic tabletop experience. They, once again, want to be the arbiters of what is and is not a tabletop role-playing game, or even just a tabletop experience. And that's not the kind of company that I want to support. That's not the kind of behaviour that I think is becoming of a company that wants to be open with a gaming license. So, as an unexpected bonus, I'm going to be filling in, or just at least looking through, the OGL 1.2 survey. So, I'm probably not going to complete all of this, because I just want to just read through it and just see what kind of questions they're asking, and then I'll probably, if I need to make any changes, come back to that at a later point. Would you like to provide feedback on the content of the proposed OGL 1.2? If you choose not to provide this content, you still provide opportunity to provide other feedback. I would like to provide feedback, yes. What concerns or questions come to mind? So I'm not going to fill this in because it takes way too long to type. So I would be asking, not that they're going to read this, so first of all, let's have a look. So regarding this, I would ask, what makes wizards believe that they are the... what makes them believe that they should have the sole right to decide what conduct or content is hateful? Because it could be something like, I don't know, let's say I made an adventure called Blizzards of the Roast, and it was about the Red Wizards of Thay around a barbecue, and one of them was based on the one of the Red Wizards at this barbecue was the Red Wizard H.Y.D.R.A, or I don't know, Schmile Blink. Yeah, Schmile Blink, the evil Archlich, who's a bit of a wanker. Now that could be considered hateful or harmful, and they'd be well within their rights to do so, because I am obviously taking the piss out of someone who works for them. But can they ban that? Is that considered illegal or obscene? And can they immediately terminate my license if I infringe on any of that sort of thing? Such as violating illicit relationship activities or violate section... or violate section 6F. So they can actually just terminate my license for Blizzards of the Roast. Immediately, because I've taken the piss out of the wizard H.Y.D.R.A, or Schmile Blink. So that's not good. Other questions I would have are why is there the need for the tabletop policy? Why do these questions exist, and why do they require thoughtful answers? I will be filling in this box heavily with a lot of questions, and I hope that they're difficult to answer, because I would like to see them squirm. Unfortunately, this is their own platform. They are under no obligation to answer any of the questions that I have got to ask them. After reading the proposed OGL 1.2, how has your perception of the future of Dungeons & Dragons changed compared to before reading the OGL 1.2? So, you know what? I'm going to say it's much worse. And I will fill that box in a minute. Later, when I turn off the camera and such. The reason why it's much worse is because, don't get me wrong, they've removed the clause where it says if you earn over 750k and we take 25% from major publishers and corporations, it's good that they've removed that, but the fact that they're still trying to claw some ground back is what bothers me. Yeah, it's like, don't get me wrong, I'm glad they've removed that clause, but they still want something else. They want something different this time, and this time they want to corner. Okay, they can't monetize third-party publishers, but they can monetize the tabletop, and they can do so by clawing money away from other developers. Your tabletop's not allowed these effects in their game. That's animation replacing imagination. That's more like a video game. But when we do it, it's okay. This is much worse, because it's now told me that they're not willing to change. Wizards of the Coast are not willing to change. They don't want to actually have an honest, working discussion. They want to win this. So I'm going to include that feedback as I do there. The OGL 1.2 is better than the previous one. It is absolutely better. But my perception of the future of Dungeons & Dragons has changed to be worse. So that's my reasoning there. The following questions cover material found in the introduction to the Systems Reference Document 5.1. How would you rate your level of understanding with the Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 International? Low, and I'm going to put 3 for satisfaction, because I'm neither satisfied or dissatisfied. How would you rate your level of understanding within your level of satisfaction with the SRD? Again, low understanding, neither satisfied nor dissatisfied. How would you relate your understanding of the level of notice of deauthorization? Let's have a look. Notice of deauthorization. So, the Open Game License 1.0a is no longer an authorized license. This means that you may not use that version of the OGL or prior version to publish SRD content after effective date. So Pathfinder is still okay, but you can't make Pathfinder, like 5th edition stuff after a certain date, or you can't make 3rd edition stuff after a certain date. It does not mean that any content previously published under that version needs to be updated to this license. Okay? Any previously published content remains licensed under whichever version of the OGL was in effect when you publish that content. So that's better, so I understand it. I'm satisfied with it, but I appreciate that there are arguments that I don't fully understand against it. And don't get me wrong, if people were to say low to everything, I would completely understand that, because they want to take a stand. and say no, we're not giving you any ground whatsoever. How would you rate your level of understanding of the level of satisfaction with the types of content covered in OGL 1.1? Let's have a look here. License content. I'd say I understand. I neither understand or don't understand. I think I'm somewhere in the middle with that. Satisfaction, I'll give it a 2. Because I could vote it for 1 because of the VTT stuff, but the other stuff seems fine. How would you rate your level of understanding and your level of satisfaction with the content ownership rights? I'm going to say 4, because this is like you own the content, but I understand as well that other people are saying like it has to be irrevocable. The other open game licenses have to be irrevocable. So, next, how would you rate your level of understanding with the satisfaction of you control your content? Again, I'm fine with that. Warranties and disclaimers, mostly okay. Moderate. Now, I understand it perfectly well, the modification and termination section. I am not at all satisfied. The virtual tabletop, I understand it completely, and I am not at all satisfied. I will just put here very quickly as a to emotion, no legalese. So I'll just put that there just to remind me in the future when I come back to this, to develop on that particular point. It's on a bit of a go slow. I do apologise for this. Here we go. Have you used the OGL 1.0 or previous version to create third-party content? I personally have not. I would like to create content, but I haven't actually got to the point of like getting to the point of like requiring an OGL to publish it or anything like that. Do you want to create third-party? Not anymore. I do not want to create third-party content for Dungeons & Dragons in the future. If I were to write my adventure, Nova Special, I would not be doing it for Dungeons and Dragons. You save your answers and come back to this with the email address you're choosing. So, okay, right, so I'll get back to that. So I won't close that down just yet. So, that's it for this particular part. So now I'm going to talk about what happens to a debt to a friend, at least potential talks about a debt to a friend, other campaigns that I run on this channel, at least do session recaps of, and future video content. So what we're trying to do now is essentially, so the group that I play with, I share the content with that group, the H.Y.D.R.A group. I also share it with 2 other groups playing a debt to a friend, the Daisy Chains and the Knights. And I am trying to figure out a system that works for all of us. So there is the possibility of using a Tamper Monkey script on Firefox to basically export all my books on D&D Beyond into PDF format, which apparently is well within the rules of the terms of service of D&D. What is not okay is then, for example, uploading those online, which I'm not going to do. I'm simply going to share this information around with my group. Again, that's well within, if that's well within the reason of the terms of service. It's going to be a bit more cumbersome. We're going to have to get used to using character sheets. We're going to have to take the time to basically create level 20 characters and export them to PDFs, so we've got quick and easy access to them when we level up through in the middle of a session, let's say at the beginning of another session. It's there, it's ready, we've got what we want, and we can go forward with it. It will be more time consuming. It means that the party won't be able to use D&D Beyond. I've got all my books still, so I can still use D&D Beyond, but it will be a bit of a pain for them. So that's what we're thinking if we stick with D&D. However, that is not the only option on the table. On the contrary, this has opened us up to a lot of other systems. Like with World of Warcraft, the only thing that can kill D&D is D&D itself. And if there's anything that's going to get people to drive it away to another system, it's D&D. So we are potentially looking at other systems. So first of all, the obvious one is Pathfinder. The pros and cons to Pathfinder are, one, that we have some familiarity with it. The DM and I have some familiarity with it. The DM has played some Pathfinder. It was his first foray into tabletop role-playing games. Unfortunately, he had a bad experience with it, not because of the rules as such, but because of the players that he was with. There were just some things about them that didn't quite seem right, and that's not an experience that the DM wants to undergo again. Also as well, he owns the books, so if we were to decide to play Pathfinder, we could look at the books. I should say as well to my group and to my viewers that I am more than willing to buy any new content. If I needed to buy, for example, 2nd edition Pathfinder, which I understand is a bit more simple and a bit easier to grasp, but has less content than 1st edition Pathfinder, I'd be willing to pay for the PDF, which is I don't know, $19.99 in USD, so that's about 13 quid. So I'd be fine with that as well. So I'm not expecting any of the players to pay a penny for whatever we're about to do. If it comes to the point where we have to play another system because D&D is too cumbersome, we can do something else. And I'm willing to pay the cost for that if it means the games continue. Because I love this campaign. I do, the DM was entertaining the possibility of just ending it to a friend. I was like, no, don't do that. We will find a way to make this work. This game is too good. You're too good a DM. We're not losing this. Pathfinder. So because I'm more of an RPG enthusiast, I can pick up RPG language a lot more easily than I think other people do. I find RPGs are in a way like learning a new language. So the more languages you know, the easier it is to learn a new language. And like with RPGs, I can look through a system and I'm like, I get it. At its basics, I get it. Delving a bit deeper into it might be a bit tough, but I also don't mind taking a few hours to read guides and watch videos and how the very basics of the game work, the fundamentals. I'm not looking at power gaming guides. I'm looking at the fundamentals so that I can help other people get into the game. And I will also do tutorials as well for my viewers. So for example, for one of our, I might say, okay, if we're going to play Pathfinder, I might make a video for the group called Let's Make Cornelius Bonaparte in Pathfinder. Let's make Rakanine Savage Worlds. Let's make Takavria in Buffy the Vampire Slayer role-playing game. It's very unlikely we're going to play Buffy the Vampire Slayer role-playing game for a Dead to a Friend. Be cool, it would be awesome, but probably not the kind of theme for that game. So Pathfinder. So I've also played Pathfinder Kingmaker. I realise it's not a one-to-one translation of the rules, but I understand. But it has set certain expectations about Pathfinder in terms of the customizability of characters, the crunch, basic rules and terminology and things like that, how things work. And honestly, that's the reason why I'm sort of voting towards maybe, let's leave D&D behind. It's you can play more than one game. It's not like switching from PC to Mac. You can have both feasibly well. So if we want to try Pathfinder, I can help out with that. So the DM owns essentially all the first edition books from a Humble Bundle. And 2E might suit us more, 2nd edition might suit us more, but it has less content and certain character ideas might not translate, so we will see. The game has a lot of crunch, so I should explain. If fluff is flavour, if it's lore, if it's setting details, if it's the stories of the world, of the game, crunch is the rules, it's the mechanics. Pathfinder is a very rules-heavy game. it works in its favour. I find like you can, rather than requiring require homebrew fill the gaps of D&D. If you want it, chances are you don't need to homebrew it. It already exists in Pathfinder. One of the things I really like about Pathfinder is it has an alchemist class that you just have a bomb and you throw it and it splashes. None of this, all this, oh, maybe you can do it in D&D, but you can't really. It's very expensive as well at level 3. You have to pay to use your class stuff. Now, I can't say that. Pathfinder has a nice way of going about it. I like Pathfinder's Alchemist. So yeah, it's a very rules-heavy game, and it has a greater learning curve than 5th edition, so our current knowledge may help with that, but we may also require time to familiarise ourselves with it. We'll see. We will see. Yeah, we appreciate as well that it won't translate 100% well, but what we lose out, I think what we'll lose out in terms of, like, for example, my character with the Artificer stuff, they'll more than make up for in hyper-specific details, which I really like. Cornelius, for example, might not have Bardic Inspiration as it worked before, but now he has an aura, and he can customize that aura far beyond what he could with Bardic Inspiration. So imagine, like, having a Bardic Inspiration, but instead of it being like one different Bardic Inspiration per class, it's now like a feat. You can have you can technically have like all the Bardic Inspirations under one character, rather than having to make a load of different characters. So that's quite good. It is by no means linear in its level progression. Compared to like D&D, which has very limited choices. And that's something I like. There's a lot of stuff to talk about, and I'm more than happy to spend time with the players as well, leveling them up, talking character builds and things like that, as we did very early on playing D&D for the first time. Another system to look at as well is something called Savage Worlds, and I do believe there is a Savage Worlds Pathfinder. I don't know too many details about it, but I think if that's geared more towards fantasy style play, Savage Worlds might work. The problem is that we have none of the players have ever played Savage Worlds before, to my knowledge, and none of us have even fewer of us have actually looked into the rule set and what it entails. From what I understand, it's a very pulpy rule set that is quite cinematic. It's not about if you do something, it's about how you do it and how well you do it. So we're trying to think if a pulpy rule set would work for the mixed tones of this game, and would our characters fit. As Savage Worlds has to be all things to all people, its rules might buckle under the amount of minutiae that of inventory management, monetary rewards, loot distribution, and all that stuff. So we will have to see how that works. Fingers crossed it works. If that's a system we're looking into, but it's just an idea. This is just an idea for a system. We don't have to entertain these ideas beyond just even this video. So other systems that I want to just mention as well. There's GE.E.S.E, the generic universal role-playing system, one of the older TTRPG systems that remains to this day. I think by Steve Jackson, I want to say. Incredible game designer. Because it needs to be all things to all people, it might not hold up for our purposes, because it has to. It's great for like running a very broad kind of game, but for fantasy and the kind of fantasy that our DM's going for, I'm not sure if that would work. I'm sure a lot of people who are experienced with it know the good that you can do with it, but as inexperienced players who are trying to transition from an already existing game 26 sessions in to another system, we kind of want one that's actually going to work for the entirety of it. And who knows, there might be another 25, there might be another 50 sessions or more of this campaign, and we would rather have a system that we can stick with until the end of that campaign. D6 Fantasy, easily found. A system that can probably easily be learnt, but I imagine it has the same problems of before, where it's a very generic system, and it has to have it probably needs the rules that we need encompassing it, and I don't think it does. And I don't think the players are going to be particularly satisfied with just rolling d6s all the time to achieve different results and setting precedents for that. So we'll see. We will see. The 13th Age, I've not heard much about this. I've heard very good things about it. People who play the 13th Age I've seen swear by it, but I am not experienced enough with looking into it. I really should, though, because I've heard it's a very, very good alternative to D&D. Apparently it's also quite gritty as well. I think it's quite hardcore, so I'm not sure if that works for A Debt to a Friend, but we will see. Exalted, I think, was by Onyx Path Publishing, or White Wolf before Onyx Path Publishing, and that's like a fantasy RPG in the vein of D&D and Pathfinder, but using the dice pool mechanics, so like using certain amounts of d10s to resolve things with, like, I think, exploding dice, much like Savage Worlds. So that's one that I've mentioned before a couple of times, and I wouldn't mind looking into. But again, does it work for this campaign? I don't know. And do we have to buy a lot of content to make it work? And are there online supplements? This reminds me as well, Pathfinder has a number of online supplements. So Pathfinder Pathfinder Nexus is currently in beta. It's in alpha. So invites are not guaranteed. However, there are websites such as Path Builder, and I think the Wondrous Path, that allow you to create characters online and hopefully perhaps even roll dice and transfer the results into Foundry or something like that. Foundry, if you buy the books on, if you buy the Pathfinder books, you can also get them on Foundry. Hey. Anyway, moving back to this. Quest. Quest is a rules-like RPG for casual audiences. It's one that I really want to play, but it might not be suitable for this campaign. If A Debt to a Friend began as a game, as a quest campaign, it would probably be okay. We might want more out of the system, and I don't think it would last like even 25 sessions. Much less however long this campaign's actually going to go on for. But it is a possibility. It's a very rules-like RPG, and it's one that I'm very impressed by. I will be getting the hardback. In fact, I'll probably be getting all of the stuff for it just to send some money to the developers, because it's a very inspiring game. To say it does very little, but it sort of encompasses a lot of what I like about RPGs, and it would be great for my darling dearest to get into RPGs, as she's having a bit of trouble understanding D&D, and it's such an unfortunate time as well, with all this stuff going on with the OGL. One last one that I own, and own several of the books of, including a couple of the Gazetteers, is Dungeon Crawl Classics. It's another great RPG that's a lot more narrative driven than I thought. And it even does sell itself as like, remember the good old days of when you just went into a tomb and killed skeletons by bashing them around their head? That's what we want to do. I don't know if that works for the kind of game that our DM's trying to run, and as well, are there online character sheets and all that sort of thing, and abilities to get that stuff online? Are the mechanics too much? It might be a bit too much, so we'll have to see. Shout-outs to other RPGs that I've seen, but I haven't read much of. Powered by the Apocalypse is a game engine that's very narrative-driven, and is like a sort of like a zero prep game. But they also have a fantasy theme called Dungeonland. And that's, I've heard good things about that. Quite hardcore though, I think. So I'm not sure. But then again, Powered by the Apocalypse is supposed to be quite a gritty, hardcore game. I think it's meant to be one where like you have to try and solve problems out of combat. But I think Dungeonland is much more combat oriented. And I don't think Powered by the Apocalypse is meant to really be like globe-trotting campaigns like the one that we're currently playing, so I don't know. Again, forgive my ignorance, I don't know that much about these systems. I haven't looked too much into them, and a lot of my memory fails me a lot of the time anyway. I've heard nothing but good things about this, but I don't know if it's something our DM can use. But Lamentations of the Flame Princess. What a name, right? I think it's actually an adventure and an engine in itself, but it's like got some really weird adventures and such. But apparently it's a really good system. Like everyone I see talk about it in reviews just swears by it, and I have no idea why. It's just like Cthulian madness has just afflicted them, and they're just like praising it. Like for whatever reason, I don't think even they know, but they love it. And of course, the greatest role-playing game in the world, contrary to what D&D says about itself. Unfortunately, I don't think it would suit the kind of game we're going for, is Jonathan Frakes wants your attention and you must not give it to him. This is a brilliant RPG on itch.io, or itch.io, that only costs about $6 US, but, I mean, on the one hand, Jonathan Frakes wants your attention and you must not give it to him, but on the other hand, high fantasy, sorry, doesn't quite work out. What a shame. But of course, I will talk to the DM about adjusting the narrative and the tone of the game so that it suits Jonathan Frakes wants your attention and you must not give it to him, because I believe with my heart of hearts that we will be playing the next session of A Debt to a Friend in the engine of Jonathan Frakes wants your attention and you must not give it to him. It's I'm not making that up. That's a real game. It was like in I think it was in like a BLM or like I think it was like a trans rights support bundle. I think it was in a bundle that was like funding like the like something very important, and I appreciate that I'm downplaying it. But it was like just like, hey, here's a bunch of RPGs and like. You know, it's like you can support a cause for it with it. So I bought it, and it's quite funny. So yeah. So that's really it for me. I appreciate this is a very long-winded talk that hasn't achieved a whole lot. But I hope it's at least given my reasoning as to why I don't feel I can give my money to Wizards of the Coast anymore. And I'm not going to lie, I know that just by ending it there, I'm kind of a lost cause. I want to say to them that, like, I will give my money back to you when you meet these certain criteria. I'm not going to lie, I can't think of any criteria in which to tell them to improve. Or when I'll give my money back. I appreciate that now I'm essentially worthless to them as a customer. But the thing is like, I would say that when Wizards of the Coast is willing to act like an adult and start talking honestly, then I will start to give them money again. But given that they've called an article a working conversation and they are not willing to work or converse, and they essentially want an echo chamber, and I believe, and I've learnt my lesson now that, I shouldn't trust a corporation and all this business. I was expecting some modicum of decency. I was expecting some modicum of a fair playing ground, and they don't want to do that. They want to set the argument on their terms. They want to use emotive language and obfuscation, smoke and mirrors to try and remove the attention from the real problems away to other things. And that's something I can't agree with, and that's something I can't condone, and that's something I cannot give money to a company for. So that's my that's my reasoning. Thank you for watching. Take care. For those who are continuing to play D&D, I hope you have a great time with it. I hope that by the time my subscription to D&D Beyond and the content sharing therein comes to an end, they can actually, grow up, stop shitting their pants to offend others with the smell, and thus directing them to the orc. And hopefully, but I doubt it, but one can live in hope. But yeah, if you're enjoying D&D, I don't begrudge anyone for that. I really don't. Anyone who doesn't agree with us, again, I don't begrudge you that. But I hope that whatever happens, that we all have fun, and I hope that the hobby that we all enjoy isn't affected too greatly by what is measurable observable shitty behaviour in real time. So, thank you for watching, take care, ta-ta for now.